Hey everybody, welcome back to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 622 being recorded on March 31, 2021. I'm Sebastian Peak.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Brett Van Spoonberg.
And I'm Kent Burgess.
Yes, Kent is here with his sterling video quality, and he is the winner of Best Background with that.
Oh, hands down, yeah.
Yeah, easily.
You mean episode of Hoarders is not the best?
Runner-up, Josh Walrath.
Mm-hmm.
Look, it's a
You've
cat.
had better lighting. Josh, you've had better lighting on that.
He just needs the purple lighting behind him like Kent does. He's like a pro streamer.
There's a lot of things I need.
We're going to get to that in a minute. I'm not happy with Josh this week, but in housekeeping, let's get that out of the way. You can find out when we go live for events like this at pcper.com/subscribe and join our exciting text mailing list. Well, it's not text. It's email, but it's text. It's not like pictures. And anyway, you can also support us on Patreon by going to patreon.com/PCper. Brett, do we have any news on that front?
You know that we do. I mean, I ask people to kind of chime in while we're here live with a new, fresh change to their name if they're already a patron subscriber or a new subscriber, and we'll read that out loud. Our tolerance is very, very wide with what we'll read out loud. There are just a couple things that we won't read out loud.
There's only about like 50% of the stuff you can think of that I won't say.
Right. Yeah. And I might say the other 25% more.
Sure. Yeah.
Actually.
And Josh and I can cover the rest.
Absolutely.
Sure.
You know, it's almost 100% coverage in the end. But we do have a couple of new patrons that I want to especially thank. John Wissink, I think if I pronounced that name properly. Thank you very much for joining sometime over the past week. I think it was last Wednesday or Thursday. Appreciate it. Thanks very much for helping us out, keeping the podcast going and the server spinning around. And I think I mentioned Mater Ferguson last time, but I just want to mention that name again because I like the name Mater Ferguson. So thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, we do. And it keeps us going.
You know, when you started all that, Brett, it suddenly brought me back to Paul Schaefer doing advertising for Rolling Stones. Do you remember those commercials?
You know, I do, and I
people
appreciate the
are
reference.
constantly asking me, Paul, what is your favorite magazine? And I always answer them, Rolling Stones. And then he does a little dingle at the end. Just call this number on the telephone. Get your subscription to
get a little
Rolling
bit more
Stones.
A little bit more nasally when I kind of roll into
Paul
that
Schaefer
one.
was the most
That's getting
man
better.
in the 80s and 90s.
You know, most of our audience is going, who's Paul Schaefer?
I know who he is, but yeah, I agree. Although, I don't know. I think our demographic are sophisticated people who know about the Letterman
The David
show.
Letterman show? Yeah, that's sophistication, all right.
I think so.
We're making a very strong case for Patreon. You know, you can support this, talking about late show sidekicks, musicians. Was he a producer too? He did a lot of stuff.
People tune into this because we don't know what's going to happen. That's why people tune in.
It's true. We don't do any rehearsals. Believe it or not, we don't do like a dry run of the show. We do it live.
We just do it
for
live.
you. And we're stalling here. I'm stalling because, you know, we have some bad news this week.
You know, this is the highlight of Sebastian's editing week, to find the perfect song to go along with the special. But there was no special today. None. I called him up. I was like, what's special? We don't have one. Talk to the owner. Clayton, what's going on, man? Where's the special? No, Josh, we don't have one. So I got the regular popper, and it tasted good, but it just was not photogenic. And plus, we've seen it about a dozen times on the podcast. But I still appreciated the 2 4-ounce patties, candied fried jalapeno, cream cheese, raspberry chipotle in a sesame seed bun, and I think they even has some pepper jack in there. The fries were on point, though. So, just, take what I said and visualize. You can do it. You don't have to have graphic interpretations. I mean, internet porn has been around only for 20 years.
Where are you going with this? All right, quickly. Let's shift gears to our featured review of the week. The internet is buzzing. There's been this energy since the beginning of March about Intel's latest and greatest desktop parts. There were a lot of rumors about the scintillating performance numbers we'd be seeing, and even some early reviews. Anantech reviewed it way back on the 5th of March by buying an early retail part that was put up for sale too soon. So it's just been a media circus, and people just can't get enough of Rocket Lake. And we got some Rocket Lake parts in for your pleasure here. The 11900 and 11600K. It's the same pairing we got with the 10th gen. We got the 10900 and 10600K last time around. So I got to compare those against the old ones. And this is new desktop architecture. It's up to a 19% IPC improvement with their Cypress Cove core, which is, it's taken from notebooks. They basically needed to get their single-threaded performance up, and along with that, you have the laptop graphics. Gen 12, actually, not even Gen 11.
That's XE, isn't it?
Yeah. From what I've seen, it's about 33% faster, and I'm guessing this up to 50 comes in select benchmarks, but hey, even 30% faster, I'll take it over what they had, and you can't buy a graphics card, so maybe you could actually do some light gaming on this.
Maybe.
And there's a new chipset. It's Intel. It's the Z590 in our test board, the 500 series, and there's some new features. Gen 4 is finally here officially. And what I was interested in, although there are barely any devices that I know of that take advantage of it, USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2. So it's the 20 gigabit USB. And if you have a 2x2 device, there was a third-party 2x2 controller that was in some select C490 boards. I know the MSI had at least one. But now it's just part of the chipset. So you can get those super fast USB devices. And then, of course, they've added some some PCI Express lanes on the CPU. So 20 PCI 4 lanes from those core processors instead of 16. So with that out of the way, I mean, because you can run these processors on the 400 series boards. You're not necessarily going to get PCI Gen 4. It had to be certified for that, like motherboard vendor side. We saw the Tai Chi from ASRock last year say that it was PCI Gen 4 ready. So, but here we go. Here's the regression. You go from 10 cores, 20 threads with the 10900K, 8 cores, 16 threads with the 11900K because, again, they backported 10 nanometer notebook tech to 14 nanometer desktop. This should be the last hurrah of 14 nanometer on desktop. Has slightly lower base clocks by 100 megahertz, but the same theoretical max boost of 5.3 gigahertz. That's the thermal velocity boost. Base and boost are 3.5 gigahertz to 5.1 gigahertz otherwise. And this is the first Intel desktop CPU that officially supports DDR4 3200, so they're catching up with Ryzen there. And then, of course, it's still 125 watt TDP, even though it's down to 4. Well, yeah, I know. I show the frequencies with the power limits on versus off in here, so you can kind of see exactly why.
Quick comment on the memory speed, though. There is some sort of very Ryzen-like issue with the synchronicity between timings of their Gear 1, Gear 2 kind of modes that they operate in, on whether or not they introduce any asynchronous wait states in order to access RAM, or whether or not there's a clock frequency that it operates in synchronicity with RAM. And I think it's 2933, I think, is the one where you need to be exactly half that for the rate inside the CPU. I don't know, that bears some testing, but I understand that it's somewhat similar to like the I think the F clock in Ryzen. With
Intel, it's never been an issue before, so it's an interesting hitch, I guess. I just tested at 3200 because that's the officially supported standard. And I test every CPU at whatever its highest official speed is. So that, of course, means that the Ryzen stuff was also tested at 32, which means the base clock was only 1600 instead of 1800 because I wasn't doing any overclocking. So any of the results that follow are worst case scenario, bone stock. You will do far better on Ryzen if you increase the F clock, of course. And so even so, you will see that Ryzen does quite well. Pricing actually seems to be higher. These are tray prices. The $539 for the i9. Yeah.
How about matte? Do they have matte prices?
I haven't seen matte prices.
Yeah, because tray is only one really half of that duo. So
you weren't even saying map. I thought you were doing manufacturer's advertised price. No, you meant matte stone.
Matt Stone and Trey Parker, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
That one actually didn't go over my head for once. But when I saw this on Newegg, over $600 for the i9. So it's significantly cheaper to buy the last gen right now. And then the i7 11700K is $400 tray price, and that's 1,000 unit price. And then the i5, it's the same price as last time. The i5 10600 and the 11600 are both $262.
It kind of seems like the 10850K is still really one of the better buys out there.
Yeah. And that's not on this chart for some reason. So
yeah.
Didn't make everyone else look bad.
At 260, the 11600K doesn't look like as horrible a proposition as the others either. It performs pretty close with the 6-core Ryzens from what I saw on various benchmarks. A little lower, but it's also, $90 less that you could spend on a GPU that you can't buy. So
it's an underwhelming launch, to say the least. And I don't think we should have expected more from basically a beefed up laptop processor. But the faster graphics are the only thing that's really captivating me. That and the platform, because I think it's nice to have the much faster. Intel typically does really well with I/O anyway, and storage, and I haven't tested storage on this yet, but you finally have official Gen 4 storage support. You have the fast 2x2 USB built into the chipset, so those are appealing, but those aren't going to get an enthusiast to build Intel versus Ryzen. Lately, the biggest issue with Ryzen 5000 has been availability of anything beyond 8 cores. I don't know if anybody else has seen more availability of the 5900X, but I'm only seeing
it's been bad.
No,
but you can get a 5800X for $449 now.
Yeah,
and that rocks.
Just did that the other day, actually.
Nice.
I'd like to see them go down about $50 in price for both the 5600 and the 3800, but
we need competition for that. Yeah. So
yeah.
Well, I mean, in theory, Intel's $10 cheaper.
Yeah.
In theory,
if they hit those prices right now, the 10th gen stuff. Some of the prices we've seen on those, especially Micro Center prices, are really low. You can get
getting the 10600X for $6. Yeah, for $200.
I'm going to talk about this in 5 minutes.
Let's talk about this in 5 minutes. But let's just look at some quick performance numbers.
No problem.
Blender, more cores equals better performance in multi-threaded tests, and the 5900X and 3900X, the 12-core processors on tests, both win handily, with the 5800X coming in third place. So AMD's 8-core performs almost identically to slightly faster than Intel's new 8-core. Let's get past Blender here because I botched that anyway. And look at something else. Let's see. Cinebench, everybody's favorite benchmark. What do you expect? AMD's on top because they have more cores and they're single.
Well, even their single thread is nice.
Yeah, and look at that. Single-threaded performance of the 5800X, 626. That's an average of 3 runs. With the 11900K running in its default no holds barred mode, 647. And then for some reason, several times where there were shorter duration tests like this, you saw better performance with all the power limits enforced manually.
You know why that's because?
Why? Tell me.
Why?
because it's not pushing as much power into there, and so the core doesn't heat up as fast and then kind of throttle down a bit. So it's the whole same thing of undervolting certain chips. You'll get better performance in thermals if you undervolt it and are still able to achieve these clock speeds. And then overall performance may even actually be better because you're not getting into that thermal headspace nearly as quickly. Make sense?
Yes.
Because I'm just talking out my butt. So
no, you're right.
Today,
no, they have a special name for it and everything.
that is so begrudging. Yeah, you're right.
I unfortunately I have to accept that. Yeah. The one area where Intel can claim a victory is in certain benchmarks that will showcase single-threaded performance. They did finally, get back on top. So here we have Geekbench. Take it for what you will, but the 11900K with and without power limits being enforced right up at the top, over 1600 for integer score, and floating point was over 1870 to 1888. And then the 5900X is down in the mid 1400s for integer, but right up there with floating point. Floating point performance with the Zen 3 stuff is very good. So better integer performance single-threaded from Intel this generation. That's the main victory there. But that's, it's not enough. And if I just move on to... this is weird to me, and I tested this repeatedly. Dota 2. You're doing a CPU review. You have to come up with a scenario where the CPU will be the factor that scales, not the GPU. So with the same RTX 2080 Founders Edition card that I've used for CPU tests for the last couple of years, put that back on the test bench, and in Dota 2, at 1080, lowest preset using DirectX 11, same scene, same exact scenario. This is actually like a pre-baked thing. I have links to how to run this in the review. But the performance is pretty shocking because back in the day, it was all Intel on the top of this chart, all the way up to 10th gen, where they were leaving, like a 3900X was at 237 frames per second, and a 9900K was at 258, and a 10900K was at 300 plus. And they surpassed that. Like the 11900K, 392. Huge gains there. But at the top of the chart, you have AMD 5800X at the very top, and a little behind it is the 5900X. And we're approaching 500 frames per second with the 5800X. So high frame rate, low detail, competitive, like esports gaming scenario like this. I could not understand how this was even possible, but I ran the test a bunch of times and they were consistent results. So either something's very wrong here, and I am on early firmware.
I'm pretty sure that entire Dota 2 game fits in the L3 cache of the AMD processor.
It could be.
That could be it.
Way more cache on the AMD side. You're right about that. But hey, I tried a different game. I just put the AMD versus Intel processors against each other in Metro Exodus, which is a DirectX 12 benchmark here, the way I ran it, at 720p. So 1280 by 720, lowest preset settings again. And here you kind of trade blows, where the 5800X was at 240 frames per second, 11900K was at 224. Right behind that, 222 was the 5900X. And then the Core i5 11th gen was at 214. But, I mean, again, 5800X. These are only two tests, but it's looking like that's the high frame rate CPU right now. And you can actually buy it.
Yeah.
Unlike the 5900X. So, power draw. That's what everybody wanted to talk about, especially after the AnonTech review. I didn't do any AVX 512 stuff to create a worst case scenario. But power consumption, all limits enforced. 274 watts. This is peak. This was not sustained. The highest it ever hit in benchmarking, I was running Blender, 274. That is actually about the same as the 10900K, which is 278. And then the 11900K without any power limits was 287 peak. That's total system draw. And I mean, it's just look at the 8-core 11th gen in relation to the 10-core 10th gen, and the fact that there's no power savings at all, even though you're 2 cores below it and essentially the same clock speeds. It's kind of, I mean, whatever. This is desktop. If you're an enthusiast, I don't think you care about running maybe 75 watts more as long as you have a cooler for it. I used a 280 millimeter all-in-one, and it was hitting 70, but it wasn't much higher in any of these tests.
Can I say one negative thing about your review?
Yeah.
When are you going to do the storage?
I'll get to it. This was a CPU performance benchmark thing. It wasn't.
I know, but PCI 4.0 is part of that performance.
Yeah.
We've got these nice, brand new, shiny PCI 4.0 SSDs.
And look, I could probably benchmark. I'll benchmark the Samsung 980 Pro.
All the things.
And show how it's like 1 to 5% faster than when I tested on the X570 platform, something like that. That's what I expect. We'll see.
Plus or minus 27%?
Sure. Yep. Here are the clocks, by the USB. Here's what it looks like on a multi-core load that lasts more than 30 seconds. Because for some reason, this is kind of telling. Tau on this was only 28 seconds. That's a notebook number. I thought desktop always defaulted to 56. I could be wrong. But this was dropping at 28 seconds and not 56. But anyway, it was starting off a little bit lower, 4.7 all-core, and then dropping to 4.2 gigahertz all-core under a long, sustained test and then without any power limits at all. It was just at 4.8 gigahertz all the time, no matter what. So if you have the power and thermal headroom, you're basically overclocking if you run without power limits. You get a lot better performance in a multi-threaded test like, this Blender Classroom render.
But you pay the price in 100 watts at the plug.
Yeah, it was 75 to 100 watts more to run without limits. So, and it was the Core i5. I didn't bother doing the limits versus no limits thing because it's a much lower power processor. It was under 200 watts even without a power limit. Total system draw running CPU benchmark. So I can't see enthusiasts buying a Core i5 and then artificially limiting performance when they're well under the thermal limit. But hey, maybe somebody will test it that way too.
What part does the board vendor play in this?
The board vendor?
Yeah,
the Borg vendor, the people who sell the Borg.
I don't know of any board vendor that does not ship unlocked. That does not ship without. The interesting thing about this was booting up the Maximus 13 Hero board for the first time, or anytime you do a CPU change, it tells you on the screen that when you press F1 to continue, you're going through with an automatic all-core enhancement, which is turning limits off. And it will decide if there's thermal headroom to enable this or disable this automatically. You can also force it to be enabled all the time or force it to be disabled. That's where the enforce all limits mode. And those three options are right up on the front page now, right above or right below setting your overclocking profile, like XMP for your memory. Right below that, are you running with or without power limits? So it's nice that it's that clear what you're about to be doing, but the default is still to disable all power limits. And it's like that on every board that I've seen, at least the last couple of generations. So the difference in power draw between these and the AMD processors is, of course, staggering. And especially the 5800X. That does not draw a lot of power. And it's as fast as this 11th gen Core i9 in most tests, if not faster. So,
it has so many more cores.
Well, no.
It's the same number of cores. It's just
the
5800X. It's remarkable. 8-core AMD versus Intel, and it's like it's been flipped. The story has been flipped, where AMD was making up with core count, and there was the core wars, and then Intel couldn't compete when AMD had a 12-core part. The best Intel could come up with was putting together a 10-core part last generation.
That's what I thought you were talking about. 12 and 16 core parts.
No, but I mean, yeah, and we didn't even talk about 16. I don't have a 5950X here.
Yeah.
And of course,
and that would make everybody else even more sad. So,
yeah.
Sad.
16 cores and still great single thread performance, but it's been not very well received. I always look at the Gamers Nexus thumbnail to see like, what's the feeling about this product? And like, oh, okay, all right, they're trashing it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, pretty much.
I have a feeling that in the next probably 3 years, Rocket Lake is going to be looked back on the way Bulldozer and Pile Driver are looked back on right now.
Yeah, it'll be similar. I think that the problem with Bulldozer was the sort of pseudo core count issue.
The CMT, yeah.
Which,
floating point.
You got a few bucks
good
for that if you were part of that class action thing.
Yeah. I've got to give some credit to where credit is due to Intel, because backporting a design from 10 nanometer to 14 nanometer is no small affair. Because if you look at how AMD does stuff, they have a lot of software tools. They've invested heavily in that kind of stuff, and there's a lot of automated place and route or trace and route, whatever you want to call it. But Intel is the opposite. They do mostly hand placement of transistors in that. I mean, now it's not as true now as it used to be, just because we're dealing with CPUs of billions and billions of transistors. But when you've got 8 cores in there, you can essentially copy and paste in ways. I mean, it's not as easy as that, obviously, but if you lay out the majority of one core, then you can do that on the others a lot more simply. But AMD overall is a lot more automated. And I don't know if you remember back in the day, early 2000s, Epic came out with their Unreal Engine, and they had these amazing graphical editing tools that anybody could use. And they, people could make their own maps and their own games and whatnot. And the mod scene really took off. But id Software was kind of the opposite, in that they didn't have those really fancy kind of tools, drop something here, drop something there, apply a texture here, do some scripting. All of their tools were really kind of esoteric, and that was the way John Carmack really kind of liked it. I mean, that was the way that his mind worked. And so they all kind of worked around that. And I mean, it came out with comparable stuff, but the ease of use on Epic and Unreal made that, a better option. Now, Intel is kind of the same way when it comes to Foundry technology. Their design tools are not as automated, and they're a little bit more esoteric, and they're more closely knit with the process technology. And so taking something that's designed for 10 nanometer and backporting it to 14 is not just, kind of reflow and resynthesize. It's a tremendous amount of work, and they were able to do it in a relatively decent time. And I have no idea how many engineers worked on this, but it had to have been a tremendous amount, because, they talked in their Foundry thing that they're moving towards better tools so that third parties can more adequately utilize the Foundry technology that Intel has. And so when you're looking through that glass, I mean, it kind of changes things around, because it was a tremendous amount of work. And even though it is not exactly pretty and came out perfect, it still runs well. It's competitive. It runs hot. It eats a lot of power, but it works. And they boost up there. And yeah, it's competitive. And they, these were, organic, free range CPUs that they were able to, provide us in reasonable amounts. So I don't know. What do you think? Am I giving them too many props?
Well, long ago, I mean, they started this a year ago, 2 years ago. They knew where this was going to land with some idea. I don't think they're too surprised to find out that they're a little bit under their previous generation and they're not as far ahead as they really wanted to be.
They're not really that far behind the previous gen. If you look at the overall performance numbers out there.
Not really.
The loss of 2 cores.
You say that so nicely.
Barely an issue. I was surprised at how close they were in some of the multi-threaded tests, just because single-threaded perf is higher. But overall, I mean, it's almost like, okay, do you want 10 cores for about the same power draw, where you'll get a little bit of an edge in multi-threaded in certain circumstances, or you want 8 cores with the same power draw that comes close because of higher single-threaded perf? It really depends on, at that point, I think, pricing and availability. And if you really, really have a use case where higher single thread is going to give you a big advantage, I think the biggest advantage to this, and we've already been on this for almost half an hour, but the platform is the bigger story here, because this is when you can be on an Intel platform and have the modern conveniences like Gen 4 and faster I/O. So that becomes a bigger deal to me than anything else, because I would prefer, I think, to stick to 10th gen if I'm building a system, because they're a lot cheaper right now. They're $100 or $200 less.
What's the real difference between buying a 590 board versus a 490 board, and putting in an 11th gen or a 10th gen chip and on either one of those? I mean, what are you really losing or gaining?
Now, Z590 is not backwards compatible, right? You can put a Rocket Lake on a Z490 board with BIOS update, but I don't know that
that's
the Z590 is
question.
backwards compatible at all.
I actually
Didn't
sort of
see anyone
assumed that
try.
it was.
I think you can put a 10 series chip on a 590 board.
Okay.
I can't remember where I saw that, but in one of the reviews I was reading yesterday, I'm almost positive someone said that.
Yeah, for some reason I thought that they had said that in some briefing, but I could be completely wrong.
Well, that was the PCIe 4.0 ready part.
Yeah, I know that the board
then
vendors
it sort of fell apart.
Well, the board vendors kind of implied, and you talked about one earlier, but many of them are in fact coming out with BIOS updates that seemingly are enabling PCIe Gen 4 on their Z490 platforms when hosting an 11th gen CPU.
Yeah.
I think that they're only, I think some of them may be only enabling the first M.2 slot and or lanes to the first PCIe slot. Does that sound right? I think that may be something that they're doing.
Unknown. I have to look into it. I'm just curious right now as to what the
I'll spread
official
that. I'll start that
CPU
rumor.
support is.
No, I didn't get around to the motherboard reviews today, so
There weren't very many, which is one of the reasons why I put on the list to find out what Sebastian thought of the Asus ROG 13 Hero at all, whether he had any initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, it supports 10th gen, so I was wrong there. No real impressions. It's just like the Maximus 12, but it's a Z590. I haven't done any storage or I/O or anything like that on it yet.
My sense is
Josh
that
is aware.
Z490 and Z590 boards seem very, very similar in a lot of ways and are aesthetically a little bit different. But the vendors that prepared for PCIe 4.0 on their Z490 boards are not having to make a lot of changes. Honestly, it doesn't seem like it.
You can check out the usual huge motherboard roundup.
Oh, there's a
the
differences
non-tech.
chart. You just
There
went
is.
by a differences chart. Yeah, you had one there. Oh, for boards that supported Thunderbolt, they went from Titan Ridge to Maple Ridge. That was actually a difference.
Yes.
You were just on that when you cut away. So boards Z490 boards that supported Thunderbolt 3 using the Titan Ridge chipset. On Z590 boards that support Thunderbolt, they're moving to Thunderbolt 4 with Maple Ridge as their chipset. So, I mean, that's good from an I/O perspective, external.
No
I/O.
offense, but who cares? I mean, this is
you're Thunderbolt.
You can look into it, for the 18 Thunderbolt devices that'll support it in the world.
There's 14.
Okay. If you're getting into the minutia of what are the differences between the two chipsets exactly,
truly.
This is not an exciting launch at all.
It's not. No,
It's
that's
not a
the
win,
point, really.
in any way on performance, except for certain single-threaded workloads. But we've been on this for a while. Let's move on.
If you can save a few dollars, maybe buy a Z490 if you really, really want this.
I would go Z490 in 10th gen myself because it's just so much cheaper right now.
Speaking of 10th gen, so I went to Micro Center today, like I threatened to do. And while I was there, I happened to scope out kind of what was in stock and on sale and kind of what they had. And they had literally, I'm not exaggerating, they had 40 GPUs. They were GT710s and GT730s. Okay. They had about 40 of those split kind of evenly. And what they did is they spread them out across the case to kind of like fill it out a little bit to make it look like they had stock. But on the end cap, there were 3 legit GPUs, 2 RTX 2060s and 1 GTX 1660 for sale. On the way out, I'll skip around here a little bit. Yeah. But on the way out, I happened to see in already purchased, the way that you buy things at Micro Center is some of the high dollar items you ask for and you see them, you don't actually take them. They say, okay, we'll have this for you at the front. And they put them in a locked cage at the front. And when you come up to the front, you can kind of present your ticket and they go get it out of the locked cage and they give it to you at the register. That's for high ticket items, high dollar items, small items like CPUs or high ticket items like GPUs. While I was walking out, I happened to see that inside the cage where people had purchased that day were probably 5 or 6 6800 XTs, AMDs, and several 3080s, probably about 5 or 6 of those as well. So stock is actually flowing to the Micro Center, which is maybe you should kind of live near one. That would be good. But while I was there, I went and got one of those hot new Intel CPUs that everybody's talking about. I know. I couldn't resist. I bought the best that I could, and I bought a 10850K. Yeah, it's the new hotness. You guys probably maybe haven't heard of this yet. Just came out. But yeah, I think it's the best value going. So I went and got one. And you should too. It was $319 for a 10850K.
That's a deal.
And hey, you're getting 10 cores and slightly
and 20
lower
threads,
clocks.
It's a good deal.
Some clocks.
Hey, are we ready to talk? Or no, Josh, are you ready to talk about ARM?
I bet he is.
Apparently not, because he's muted.
Not. He's muted.
Oh man,
he's cut
it's passing gas and didn't want anybody to hear.
How much snark did we miss? Like as a percentage of the whole, like 2%, 3%?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, on Monday, I attended a virtual conference, which of course makes me cry because this was the England trip year for ARM. But, COVID ruined the Austin trip last year, and now it's ruined the England trip, and it was supposed to be in Cambridge. And, it makes one cry because who doesn't want to go and visit England in the spring and drink beer?
Cambridge is beautiful. I've been there.
Yeah. So, anyway, we weren't sure what was going to be presented. We thought it would be kind of another refresh of what is their latest stuff? The A78? I can't remember. There's too many numbers in there. And, new Mali, new NPUs. And we thought that, they'd just kind of, enhance the stuff that they had and they go there. But no, they shocked everybody. They announced the ARM v9 architecture. Now, previously it was the ARM v8, which its big claim to fame was it was the first ARM 64-bit architecture. ARM v9 extends past that, so it's full ARM v8 compatibility. This is really aimed at high performance and not necessarily high power. So they're really aiming at a lot more machine learning. They're pushing. Let me take a look at my slide here. Improved security. I mean, that is one of the biggest things that they are working on. It's I think their compute core security. I can't remember exactly. I mean, I should really take notes about these things and be prepared. But it is a much more extensible and secure solution than we have seen before. And when we're talking from edge to servers, the amount of jumps in there and the products that we have and all the possible things that could go wrong, this is a great idea. And they're working on, better virtualization support, better security within virtualization. You'll have, containers in there and running programs that are all, blocked off from each other. And it's all done in hardware. So it's extremely quick. And they're hoping, mostly transparent to users. And with IoT and 5G and all these other words and things out there, security is I mean, you have to have that from the very beginning. I mean, we've had, Rowhammer, we've had Spectre, we've had all these other things that have, been a problem for the vast majority of CPUs out there. And ARM is trying to nip this a little bit more in the bud by having a more secure solution from, basically design start. So ARM v8 was released in 2011 in October, I believe. And now we're almost 10 years to that point. And we've now got a new architecture. It's still 64-bit, but it's really predicated on how do we do machine learning and these type of workloads better? How can we better integrate accelerators and DSPs? And then, of course, from the very beginning, how do we integrate better security than what we've had throughout our entire lineup and what our competitors have to, enable, sticking cell phones and point of sales and, wireless transactions and everything that we take for granted, which is not always as secure as it probably should be. So these are the main points that ARM is really pushing with their new ARM v9. And they didn't go into a lot of details about what products would be coming out. All they said is that the first ARM v9 stuff will be some basic products at the end of this year. And so I can't remember which group was talking about that. It might have been Huawei, Zenmi. I can't remember.
Probably
Again,
both.
Taking notes would be good. But anyhow, it was the middle of my workday. I couldn't get any time off. I was trying to do help desk stuff at the same time as paying attention to this, and just nothing works for me right now. It just feel sorry for me. Here's my Patreon.
You need more machine learning.
Yeah.
Well, the compute of tomorrow transcends performance, Josh.
Sure, it
the
does.
slide says.
But anyway, I mean, RV9, it's a significant jump. Maybe not as significant as going to 64-bit on ARM, but the stuff that they're doing, I mean, they're really aiming for the promise of heterogeneous compute that we were offered 12 years ago with AMD when they started talking about the future is fusion. And this really is, I mean, it's NPUs, it's GPUs, it's CPUs, it's instruction sets that are more finely tuned for machine learning. So, I mean, if you've seen in the past 5 years, what even just their CPUs were able to do with different types of instructions and what do you call them? Just not instruction code, but like, FP8 and int8 and stuff like that they have integrated in. I mean, because, machine learning doesn't require the precision. It just needs a lot of throughput. And so you could have, lower precision type stuff and do it faster. But previously, you either had, all or nothing. I mean, you had a pipeline that could handle these, FP8 stuff, but in theory, it could do, at fully functional, it could do FP32, but you couldn't do 8 FP8. I'm probably not even doing this right, but anyway, you couldn't do that for FP8 instructions or workloads going through there at the same time. You were just limited to one, but they've improved the granularity of all that. So, you have much better support for all of these data functions that, machine learning requires. And when you're talking about, visual type learning stuff, photography and identification, voice commands, other, software that's coming out that will be more sound oriented and identifying things and whatnot. It's going to, utilize the CPU, the GPU, and these NPUs that they're trying to get out and get better support for. And that's coming. And we haven't even talked about NVIDIA coming in. And while it's not a done deal, they're really hoping to get the ARM hardware with the NVIDIA software stack, which, after working in the machine learning industry as I have in my primary job, NVIDIA is really the gold standard when it comes to machine learning. I mean, their hardware and their software dominate. Other people have tried to get in there, but it's just, it's CUDA. You run stuff with R and CUDA and Python, Anaconda, but it all comes back to, it all runs on NVIDIA hardware and their software stack. And we're going to see, if things go the way NVIDIA wants, and seemingly ARM does too, they're going to have a huge jump in the mobile market from everybody else, just because they instantly have this really complete, robust, mature software stack of CUDA software and applications, and a couple of generations of programmers who are now familiar with this stuff, all going onto the ARM system. It's it's exciting for them. Might be exciting for you. I don't know. It depends if you like NVIDIA or not. But it just is. I mean, NVIDIA has really the best software stack out there when it comes to machine learning, and they are able to leverage all these other third-party guys, but it all runs on kind of this CUDA base, and it's what's known, and you program what you know. Any questions?
Josh, from an
ARM tirade?
The top supercomputer just a little while ago was an ARM V8 based machine, wasn't it? And
it's what, the Fugaku?
Wasn't it UK or was it in Japan?
It's in Japan. Now, NVIDIA is doing a supercomputer with ARM in Cambridge, and I can't remember what that one's called.
That's what I was
thinking. But it's not going to be the fastest, but it's going to be pretty hefty. But yeah, I think it's the Fugaku.
One of the reasons why the architecture scales, or not scales, but really works so well is because their instructions are all the same size, which is not at all like x86. It's one of the reasons why Sebastian, I love this. It's one of the reasons why the Macs are so quick, so really fast with this particular architecture, is because they don't have a really complex instruction decoder. Whereas, unfortunately, x86 has a lot of, let's just say, legacy problems with different length and size of instructions and on what's a data element and what's an instruction to work on the data. In ARM, they sort of saw that as a problem, and everything is the same size. So their decoder step is far, far more architecturally efficient than x86's, honestly, will ever be until x86.
You're going into some serious philosophy there. We could talk about it, something to talk about, because yeah, the x86 overhead is not nearly what it used to be, and we're at the process technology and design that it's not as big as it used to be. I mean, 15 years ago, if you wanted low power, you're going to get an ARM with RISC, because there are just some good things with just how it handles instructions and decode and these parts that typically consume a lot of power in the past, but not anymore. But yeah, no, I mean, it's RISC is still, I mean, it's they've done some great things. If you go way back into like 1985 and look at the ARM1 versus the 8088 or 8086, overall system and performance was far better just because it was better architected. But IBM had the IBM PC, and it was, it was an Intel processor, and it dominated most of the world, even though Acorn, back in the 80s,
the Acorn back then.
they developed the ARM1 chip, and they started on the, let's go RISC and let's get our memory in order and the tube in between the chips and it's just architecturally speaking, it was an advanced product just compared to the IBM PC. But
and at least the BBC loved them.
They started from a slightly different place.
And Micro. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And with the standing on the shoulders of what had come before them, which was Motorola and Intel at the time. So.
Yeah. So that's like a couple hour discussion. And
heck, but good stuff.
But yeah,
boring,
it's
but
yeah. Yeah.
What was the original?
But we can leave philosophy
acronym
later.
Was it
what?
Acorn RISC something or other? Is that
machine?
What Acorn RISC machine? Okay. Any other comments on this before we move on?
It's neat stuff. I'm excited to see what they're able to do. It's going to be a while before we see a lot of productization on this, but the hardware is coming out. We'll get more details on it probably in October, and we'll see what new things that they will bring. But it's a much more tightly integrated ecosystem when it comes to having not just CPUs and GPUs, but CPUs, GPUs, NPUs, DSPs, and other accelerators that their partners are developing for certain workloads. So it's going to be fun and interesting to see.
You know where you won't see it?
Where?
Computex 2021. At least not in person.
Why?
Not that it would be there anyway. Is what's the other one? What's the big mobile show in Barcelona every year?
Mobile World Conference.
NWC, that's right. Are they still having that? Was that canceled? Has that already happened?
Last I heard, they were blathering about trying to do it.
They were still trying to do it. That seems insane.
Yeah.
The organizers behind Computex
pretty much come and gone.
Came to their senses. So they've canceled the physical show. Virtual event still taking place. So, hey, exciting. Sign up for all those virtual sessions. You can't really hold the show when none of the vendors will come and the borders are shut down for,
we're
going to have an Olympics where there'll be no outside attendance other than the competitors. Why would we have Computex? And other things are being canceled.
They're not the only ones.
Of course, right. Yeah. So like PAX East is canceled.
E3.
Of course, yeah. E3's... will that ever come back? Will that just become a virtual event?
Hard to say. Probably will come back.
It's like they can get most of it done while not even being there.
It's all...
Most of that is true of all of them.
It just depends. How much money do you want to spend for hype? And I think for a lot of these companies, it's a big focus, but it's an older show. It's not as necessary as it once was.
As opposed to Computex, right?
Yeah, Computex is a big deal. Far bigger deal in our industry than CES is. But you don't really need any of that. I think we were conditioning ourselves over this last year and a half or so to just do everything virtually anyway. It is very different to have a product session with a representative where they're just holding up hardware in front of a webcam. It's nice to be able to go hands-on with stuff.
It is
a little odd.
I think that the first big show that comes back after everything else has died down, I think that attendance is going to be huge because companies have not spent money on travel. People have not spent money on travel. People have been stuck in their homes. And so I think, Kat, stop scratching me. Ow, kitty.
Cat scratch fever.
Yeah, I think that when something like this actually opens up, they're going to be inundated with requests to go there, and hotels, and because people miss seeing other people. People miss experiencing Taiwan or Las Vegas or Cambridge, and so once this opens up, it's just going to be. I mean, I think that they will underestimate how many people will want to show up, just because budgets have been in place that you were to travel and they haven't. And people are sick and tired of looking at their same four walls at home.
Well, we'll find out in Barcelona.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Because they did move Mobile World Congress till the end of June.
Oh, okay.
And it will be in person.
Okay, fantastic.
And
at least until it isn't. Until it's canceled.
One of the ones I added to the list was Gamescom, which is doing a hybrid event. So they're doing a limited attendance. So they're limiting the number of people.
The most important one
attend.
is WWDC, and of course that's all virtual. Craig Federici,
that's fine.
with a virtual set behind him. It's going to be great. Can't wait.
It's a 1.5 story tall video screen with
because it's going to be all about M1X and the new iMacs, right?
Yeah,
sure. I might buy one.
Of course you will. All right. Let's see. Before we take a break here, let's mention Jeremy posted
one more.
Another version of Ada 64 6.3.
Yeah, because there was kind of a launch, so you gotta be able to see what's going on that Z590 board. Which is, of course, one of the major big ones is the B560 and the Z590. There is, however, as the little screenshot that you're showing shows, a variety of new GPU tests, which sort of focus on more of the productivity machine learning type of tests. Seeing as how, that's what a lot of people are using it for right now. They've also caught up with the brand new Epics. So Milan will be very nicely supported as you pick this up. This is a major update, but not a new version. So if you've already got it, just do the update.
Who's the dude behind that? Tomas?
Yeah.
He always drops a nice little note for me. Hey Josh.
Oh yeah.
Blah 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 blah. Released a new one. Here you go. How come you never call me anymore?
I still chat with him. At least I try to. And then for your water coolers, the other fun thing is that not only did they decide to add a whole bunch of support for a variety of Corsair's all-in-one water coolers, but they've also included Aqua Computer's High Flow Next. So if you build your own cooling loops, you should also be able to get some stuff. So it's a great little platform, not just for giving you just about everything you'd ever want to know about what's going on in your system at a time, but some decent benchmarks as far as stability and performance goes. So if you got it, hit the update button. If you don't, there's a month-long trial, and it's worth it. And the personal editions aren't exactly that expensive, so it might, if you're interested and serious in doing it, the $40 for Ada 64 Extreme isn't a horrible idea.
Let's pause here for a word from this week's podcast sponsor.
If you're like me, and I know I am, you crave a good night's sleep. Well, I suggest that it's time you take some action to make that happen. For us around here, we were thinking about getting a new mattress when bam! The next day, and out of the blue, Helix Sleep made us an offer to try out one of their custom-tuned mattresses. Getting a mattress tuned up for us was easy. See, Helix Sleep has a quiz on their website that takes just a couple minutes to go through that matches up your body type and sleep preferences to one of their models, which is totally in tune with you. See it for yourself over at helixsleep.com/PCPer. They have several mattress models to choose from: soft, medium, firm, and even ones that are great for cooling those hot sleepers. And you know who you are. And models for plus-size folks, too. So after taking the Helix Sleep quiz, we were matched up with the Luxe model due to our firmness requirements and sleep positions. The funny thing was really, I wouldn't have picked that one out for ourselves, and I was a bit doubtful. But after trying it out, seriously, the Helix Sleep quiz actually nailed it for us. It's been a really excellent experience. We sleep better and more comfortably than ever. It's been a massive upgrade, and we're definitely happy with our tuned Helix Sleep mattress. So take the 2-minute Helix Sleep quiz for yourself, find the version of a tuned mattress, get it shipped out to you for free, and then try it out for 100 nights risk-free. Go to helixsleep.com/PCPer because right now, Helix Sleep is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our podcast listeners. For a better night's sleep, head over to helixsleep.com/PCPer. Get on the path towards a good night's sleep.
And we're back for an exciting revelation. This was amusing news from last week.
Yeah, but was it true?
What, the GA102-250 thing?
The crossout. It's a little bit further
that
down.
That looks a little weird.
It's a little sus.
If you haven't read about it, allegedly there was going to be an RTX 3080 Ti. And they canned it, according to rumors. And it's basically the same as a 3090. Some things were shut off, perhaps. But you can just re-enable it, and you have a full-fledged 3090, or at least allegedly so. Video card's source says, quote, all GA102-250 GPUs are being remarked GA102-300 by NVIDIA to be used in RTX 3090, end quote. And according to a user from Hardware Lux, you can see this picture with a GA102-250 crossed out and GA102-300A1. Now, this could have been done after the fact.
You fired up the silkscreen machine just to do that, did you?
Could have been photoshopped, I guess.
Dude, that's laser etching. Get it better.
It already has thermal paste on it.
Bad thermal paste, too. I mean, that's not where you'd want it.
So, I don't know. It makes sense to me that they'd repurpose it if they can sell a SKU that has better margin, that's in demand, obviously.
Yes. They don't have to create a new SKU, exactly.
Yeah.
All new packaging and
the
launch.
SM count between these two, if you look, this is, of course, an unannounced product.
I like
They're
how they
claiming
headlined this with
80
to be leaked.
SMs.
To be leaked.
Yeah, the
I
picture
love that.
says to be leaked, yeah. CUDA cores count. I mean, it's such a similar product that the only real difference becomes the half the memory. It's only 12 versus 24 gigabytes of GDDR6. Slightly lower clocked, too. But that's all rumor. I mean, we don't know. It says May 2021. So, hey, maybe we'll hear something in a month or two about this new 3080 Ti that's close to the performance of a 3090, but with half the memory. Maybe we won't, but
you know what?
Anyway,
in 6 weeks we'll know for sure.
Or will we? Will we know anything for sure?
You'll know first.
Yeah, but I won't.
Well, no,
talk
it's not in
about it.
stock, regardless.
You can't
Launched
buy one,
or not,
but
you won't be able to buy one.
right.
You know, at least NVIDIA kind of figured out that, we're going to release a bunch of SKUs all before the new year. And then they started releasing SKUs and they're like, we really don't need more SKUs. We probably just need to ship what we have out and make some money and keep our partners happy instead of fracturing this even more and making things even less accessible. So no more SKUs until you can get into our hot little hands.
Yeah, no more SKUs. Just sell one GPU and make it $100 and make a billion of them.
Exactly.
Right. Speaking of NVIDIA, this will be of interest to some. NVIDIA officially enables GPU pass-through for added functionality on VMs. Please explain to me what this is.
For people who don't know what this is, where you can host a system that might be running Linux as an operating system, but it could be running something like Proxmox or Unraid, which is a typical kind of server environment. Yes, exactly. ESXi. Yep, I have another very good example of typical, maybe even home or small office environments that host a disk service and multi service environment for hosting VMs. A lot of times those will be on a system that has an inbuilt iGPU, so there's already potentially local video. But you may also want to host a Windows environment on that machine. It was extremely difficult, and NVIDIA actually worked against this on purpose of passing through that video card to a hosted virtual environment that might be running Windows, where that poor home user could probably have a server and a games environment if they could just get their Windows virtual server on that sort of Linux system to pass through the GPU to the virtual environment. NVIDIA kind of reserved that functionality for their higher end server-based, what they would consider their server class GPUs at the time, and for their very expensive clients, and fought against it. They're finally allowing GPU pass-through for their consumer level cards, which is very nice of them. So kudos. AMD's essentially allowed this forever. It's about time that NVIDIA did as well. So
yeah, I mean, it wasn't totally banned or anything before, but it was a lot more
work around it
to get it done.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. You are correct. But they fought, they worked against it. They didn't make it easy at all. That's it. Good on them. They've done a consumer friendly move. I just want to recognize that.
Huzzah.
I hope it passes through physics too.
Did you say physics or physics? I just was wanting to check
Physics.
that. That's what I thought you said. Systems like Unraid make this super easy. They essentially give you a screen where you can just check the box and say, yeah, Linux, ignore this, or Unraid, which is based upon a version of Linux called Slackware. I think it was Slackware. Pass this through to whatever VM that I want to fire up next. That could be some version of Windows or even Mac OS.
All right, speaking of going way back, we'll go back to the fashion trends of the 1970s with Jeremy this week. Disco Elysium Final Cut. What is this?
Well, I mean, it's the final cut of Disco Elysium.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you haven't run into this game, it is freaking bizarre. It is, for the most part, interaction based. You're not running around shooting people. Good Lord, it's actually probably good you don't have a gun. Although the way that you got rid of your gun is probably not the best way you could have done it. You are a horrible, horrible person, and it is a very incredibly odd and well-drawn game with just the most ridiculous choices, and anyone who's bitched and screamed about, I want a game where the choices that I make completely and totally change the game. Well, this is one that, you make some choices and it will happily kill you. As you start responding to people, the game changes. You will not get the same playthrough again. And it's bizarre. So the final cut, it's been out for just over a year now, I think. And they've added, they said, somewhere around another 1 million lines of spoken dialogue, a variety of new quests, fancy new equipment and outfits to put on. Although in this case, the chances are the hat does some good things and some bad things. It's not just a pretty hat. In fact, there's not much you put on that is pretty. It's a little bit of a sale right now. If you already own the game, of course, you're immediately upgraded to the brand new one. Just give it a shot. It's bizarre. It is truly, truly strange. And if you can get your head around listening to people talk and reading through dialogue chains, you will really enjoy it.
How long does this take to play through?
I don't know.
What's a playthrough take? Or is there ever an ending?
I don't know. I started playing it and I got distracted with a bunch of other things. I had just finally gotten a plastic bag so I could start picking up empties to try and afford to be able to get into my hotel room again.
A plastic bag in your head. That probably will help.
It was not an option, although give him some time, and that probably is actually one of the things he likes to do. Okay. We just don't know yet.
Is anybody excited about Sonos moving up to 2448?
No, and that's the point.
I know, because nobody cares, and streaming services are not 24-bit, 48 kilohertz. 48 kilohertz is that standard sampling rate for video. Like, what you're watching right now is probably 48 kilohertz 16-bit on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, I do 1648 for that as well. But
yeah, Qobuz or Qbuzz or however the hell you want to pronounce it are claiming that they are actually streaming 24-bit 48 kilohertz FLAC tracks.
Well, I mean, it's not like we don't have the bandwidth for it. Audio, significantly less bandwidth than video, even uncompressed. 2448 tracks on a Blu-ray, like Dolby True HD or something, is not that big.
Well,
it's over a megabit.
Well, you're not going to hear the damn thing.
CD?
Yeah, but yes, exactly.
4.8 gigs as well, SACD per disc?
No, SACD is different.
That goes way back.
It's 1 bit, and it's in the gigahertz.
Super audio.
It's 5 point something gigahertz sampling on 1 bit instead of like 1624.
But no, I put this up because it is just one of those absolutely hilarious audiophile things where if you look at actually the math behind it and how your ears perceive sound, I'm sorry, but yeah, no, you aren't going to notice a damn thing. And if you do, well, there's a special blend of crystal formula that's been fine-tuned by ear to 0.01 grams, which you can use to, put underneath of your audio equipment. It's a rock that separates it completely.
Okay.
And isolates it from any input
How about
sound.
that Denon Cat 5e cable?
Oh, I've got one better, Josh. I dug around and
$300 for a meter. Yeah.
$50,000 for 2 meters for Emperor Double Crown speaker cable. 2 meters, 50 grand. It's a deal, right?
I thought I was living large when I was buying Monster cable.
Yeah, well, it's gotten bigger.
There were a couple of commenters.
Go ahead. I really miss Radio Shack because they actually had pretty decent high gauge speaker cable. They're surely inexpensive.
They did.
Best Buy actually still has decent speaker cables in stock.
But anyway, sorry I interrupted you, Brett. Go on with what you were saying.
There were 2 commenters to this Sonos article that pointed out the exact same issue with you're not going to hear it, and they referenced a study that had been done at one point, and the mathematics just didn't work out versus the human ear, especially as stupidly we decide to get older, and our ability to hear highs and lows are just dramatically diminished. 15 kilohertz would be still good. 10 kilohertz.
There's a huge misunderstanding about this because sample rate when you're quantizing an analog signal to digital, when you're creating ones and zeros out of an analog waveform. The sample rate is not the frequency. The sample rate is the frequency with which you sample the analog signal. And yes, a higher sample rate enables you to have a bigger spectrum of frequencies. But the importance is having a more accurate representation of an analog waveform, not having higher frequencies. And there's been a lot of FUD spread out there by companies who want to sell you on the fact that, for instance, if a pair of headphones can hit 30 kilohertz, then it gets into the HD audio range. And that's nonsense. Because I personally cannot hear above about 16 kilohertz. I used to be able to hear 18.
Yeah, but
I haven't been able to hear 20 in forever.
Interactions at above when you, I mean,
that you can't
hear. Harmonics. Those are harmonics.
And it's true. You can't hear, but there are physical interactions between waves that.
I'm with you, but I'm way more concerned about the bit depth than the sample rate. 44.1 is a great sample rate. I like 48 is better. Technically, 96 is better. Anytime you can sample the audio more times, it's going to be a more accurate representation of that original waveform. But the word length of only 16-bit, it's quite limiting as far as the total, the different variations of amplitude that you can have. 24-bit takes it
and minimal values.
way beyond it. It's
Isn't that
levels of magnitude
Mantissa?
beyond it.
We're talking Mantissa, I think, is the correct
That is a mathematical term.
Anyway, but no, I mean, if you're limited to 16-bit, it's like in visual HDR. going from 8-bit to 10-bit. It's a massive difference, just because the eyes can do colors and brightness levels. It's that same thing with audio.
But then there's the other argument, which is the source.
Oh,
Because
sure.
nowadays, music, the dynamic range starts at 98% and tries to get up to 110. There is no quiet. There is no range in music anymore, and that's about the only way this would actually make some bit of a difference as you're crossing over different harmonic levels. But
it's totally irrelevant because you're playing this through a Sonos. I don't think there's any difference listening to a Sonos in somebody's room. A 256-bit or kilobit MP3 playing over some streaming service versus CD quality audio or higher. I don't know if you're going to hear the difference over one of those little speakers. It's not an audiophile system. This is something to showcase HD audio, to make the system look more appealing to people who want to switch over because of the convenience factor of streaming. It's tremendously
Let's talk about what's going on inside
convenient.
your room. Your room has just ruined it. So it's all over.
Yeah, that's another discussion. But yeah, I mean, I love it when people look down their noses at high resolution audio and say that, well, studies have been shown. Right. Studies have been shown you can throw away 90% of the audio and it still sounds okay, because you can do psychoacoustic masking of certain frequencies that are less prominent than other frequencies that we're hearing in real time. But I'm just interested in the audio reproduction itself from the standpoint of if you're going to archive something digitally, do it at a really high bit rate, really high sample rate, because then it's going to be a lot closer to the analog tape. And then when the analog tape is destroyed in a warehouse fire, you haven't really lost anything because you backed it up in such a high resolution format that it sounds identical, right down to the tape hiss and the clicks and everything else. So,
but to use it as an advertisement to sell your $200 wireless speaker,
I know it's.
I spent years dealing with this with the human visual system, different sensing organs.
Well, that's even crazier. And don't even bring
similar
green
problems. Into it. Or blue. We have terrible memory for blue.
Let's take a break here from this inane babble to hear from podcast sponsor number 2 this week. We had a second one, sneaked it in there on me.
Hey, try this for a change of pace. Work smarter, not harder, right? Well, TextExpander can help you out with that. TextExpander is a system-wide utility which allows you to instantly insert snippets of text from a repository of emails and other source content immediately as you type, using a built-in quick search function or abbreviation. It sounds simple, I know, but it can really help you focus your time on more important tasks instead of the mundane. Because with just a few keystrokes, TextExpander keeps you consistent, accurate, and working more efficiently. Speed through those email responses using a forms-based approach, kind of a fill-in-the-blank style, using TextExpander's quick abbreviations or powerful shortcuts to streamline, well, pretty much everything you type. If you've typed it before, you can quickly type it again. Get your message right every time. Correct those spellings and stay consistent in your language with just a few keystrokes. That's the power of TextExpander. You wouldn't be alone in this, as there are thousands of companies already using these features in customer support, sales, and legal departments. Our show listeners can get 20% off their first year by going over to textexpander.com/podcast. Again, that's 20% off your first year. Visit textexpander.com/podcast to learn more.
Mercifully, the podcast is almost over. I hope. Well, we're in our last half hour. I promise.
No, it really goes downhill from here.
Let's quickly touch on the last couple of topics here.
There's really only one I really, really want you to bring up.
What is this?
I don't want you to bring up this version.
Okay, no, come on. We're not doing.
I want you to bring up the other version
stuff.
Go to the other version of this.
No.
Yes.
What
please.
other version? Why do you do multiple links for the same thing?
The one that says use one. This one instead.
One is special.
Are you not going to read this one?
Enhanced.
You play the video.
I'm enhanced. Are we going to play the video? Okay.
Yeah, you can play the video.
Yep. So
tired of your dull, boring hair.
Dull, terrible. Oh, glow up, man! Get new Razer RGB Hair Flow Nanotech.
No,
Comes
this
with
is
remote
compatible
controller.
with their glasses, right?
It is not.
That's just ridiculous.
I liked the
totally
elite
different.
reference to the number of ingredients there.
It's
You
You know what?
Final
Honestly,
paragraph
if this
in the-
was real and it was app controlled, this would be awesome.
Right.
You could just walk around, like pull up your smartphone and be like, I want blue hair right now. I want purple hair. Now I want pink hair.
I think
I can be any anime girl I want to be.
To be able to self-generate the electricity to be able to change and communicate.
Yep.
So short-haired guys like me. Yeah.
Yeah, short-haired guys.
Oh, it's discrimination against Josh. That's true.
We'll be able to.
They need to have like an RGB headband so that anybody.
No, subdermal
really
implants.
states that Razer is working on a solution for Josh. They have they've got a toupee version of it coming out. They're going to bring back
version.
a name from a dead product line. They're going to call it the Orb Weaver.
Ooh, I like it. The Merkins will be sold under that name as well.
Okay, all right. See,
Oh Lord,
it always comes
they
down
got
to
to be
that
waterproof
too.
though.
People of a
You'd
certain
want 'em to be.
age seem to have a thing about Merkins. I don't know why.
You'll find out.
I don't. I
Not
won't.
for a few
Actually, I
years
won't
yet,
find
but-
out. All right, let's see.
All right. I'm going back in. I'm hitting publish on this one. It's going to Twitter.
No, please. Okay. The Volts. Why not? Who cares? The VoltsWagon thing that I heard about the other day. Apparently, I don't want to sign up for anything. No, thank you.
Just no thanks on that.
Apparently, that was fake. I mean, it's so it's
some
a
auto
late
journalists
March
got-
joke, guys. Sorry.
They got their butt hairs in a twist because of this. I can't believe you lied to AP and these New York Times reporters and Auto Trend and me, some guy from Jalopnik. I'm so angry. It's like, come on, take a joke. Can't be serious about anything
Hey,
anymore.
we don't do April Fools anymore because of COVID, Josh.
I just think the Germans did not quite understand April Fools 2 days early. I don't think that they understood
Yeah,
it.
2 days.
And-
Well, I think it
This was
leaked early,
Volkswagen
didn't it?
America.
It was a leak.
I'm sure the Germans had no idea what was going on.
Well, they
I
do
mean,
now.
they're very well known
They
for their
do
sense
now.
of humor.
I don't even know what just
I
happened.
don't know, that one German comedian lady is pretty funny. You know, that's cutting
We
the
don't want to get into
peppers.
any more trouble.
She her kid comes crying and she
gives the
rubs it.
kids.
Yeah,
She makes
she
me
was
laugh
hilarious.
every time.
Yeah.
There was a set of Volkswagen commercials back in the 80s or 90s that was Germans don't do comedy. And one of the jokes I actually found funny, it was how many German engineers did it take to change a light bulb? 0 if manufactured correctly.
Right. It's not funny at all.
The 3 Unpimp Your Auto commercials were hilarious.
Oh, snap.
But half of that was the actor that they did, who was what, Swedish?
I believe
Norwegian?
it was.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
remember
he
his name,
was.
though.
He was sweet or a Dane. And
Hilarious.
Yeah. Hilarious guy.
Time to unpimp the auto.
Das Pimp das Auto. We just
Accents are
dropped it
always
like
funny,
it's
aren't they?
hot.
It doesn't work without the accent. Not to us Americans.
Doesn't. So I did my best at pretending to be a power supply reviewer. I admit, that it's not been my forte, but I did my best to try and stress the hell out of them until they broke, which I did.
Just use them for mining.
Which is,
That's what everybody does
Yeah.
with high power supplies, right? That's why they're so freaking expensive right now.
yeah. But I mean, if you could buy one and you wanted a power system with one, these are fairly reasonable. Although, as I tested out, I would suggest that they use the 650 in a mid-range system and keep your overclocks to a minimum. I was able to actually, cause the 650 to fail to a certain point where it would literally, that you're kind of doing your overclock and you've gotten your motherboard or your GPU to a point where it's like, oh, it just reset and it reboots. You're thinking like, okay, if I just dial this in just a little bit more, maybe a little less voltage here or a little bit more current there, depends on what it is that you're doing, or a little bit less clock speed, or I'm going to nail this. I'm going to get it in. I'm going to get it dialed in. Weirdly enough, and this is the first time I've ever had a chance to do this, I got a system to that point where it was snap resetting, and all I did was I pulled the 650, kept all the settings that were causing the system to reset, and put this 850 in. And you know what? It ran just fine. That may be obvious in retrospect, but I've never had a chance to take two power supplies that are almost identical internally. And actually, I have some open pictures on the review that shows the board level. They're pretty much almost identical, except for a few capacitors and the sizes of certain components in there.
The true time for the modular is actually handy, right?
It is. It was sort of very interesting for me to
pop, and away you go.
Yeah, and to discover that, like, you know what, sometimes no matter how much tweaking you do, when you're convinced that I'm this close to my perfectly dialed overclock, it might be your power supply that's holding you back. Hey, I like that one, that picture right there that you just went by, the one that's just above this one.
Yeah.
Where I happen to mention, you gotta dismiss that upper right-hand corner. This one where I said, oh, the one that says danger, high voltage, don't tamper with this, essentially. It was hiding a screw. At least that told me which ones that I needed to remove to get the case off. So thanks for that.
Well, typically the tamper evident screws, like the stickers are over the screw, yes. So.
Well, there's other, maybe you saw it in a picture, but there was another set just beside it, and I wasn't sure, like, well, which set is holding the case together and which one's holding the fan. So, yeah, that was actually helpful.
Brett has this week learned that the screws that hold a PSU together are different from the ones that secure the fan to the metal frame.
I knew that. I just didn't know which one was which, and it was helpful to have the don't take this
Let's
apart.
get back into this review. Let's guide us through the interior of these power supplies as I shrink the picture instead of making it larger.
Oh, I know. It's just based upon the size. But anyway, the 650s on the left, the 850s on the right, and they're pretty much the board is identical between them. The capacitors are a little bit sized a little bit differently. The transformers
who made these?
a little bit differently.
Lead Tech, or who made these?
They're all Japanese. I can't remember the manufacturer. The
Nichicon
caps.
They're the caps, right? But usually there's a board, like a PSU.
I could not see I couldn't see. Yeah.
Okay.
It was Rosebud. Right. I couldn't see who was making the board, but I did take a picture of the board IDs, and they're the same between the two of them.
Okay.
So, the 1,000-watt power supply is actually different. That's slightly longer, and they needed a different board layout. So for that one, but all of the ones from 550 to I guess 850, this particular range goes in. So 550, 650, 750, 850 are all on the same board.
I will point out, since I don't think you mentioned it yet, for audio listeners or video viewers, these are there is an existing RM series, and there's an RM 1000X, 850X. This is the 2021 version, and for some reason they're retaining the old branding exactly. So the RM 1000X 2021 is different from the RM 1000X that we've been using for years on our test beds here.
Which is a good point. These things do have a longevity. So skipping right to the end, really, my advice is probably buy a bigger power supply than you think you need, and it's probably worth it, especially if you're an enthusiast who's going to be overclocking. These things last a good long time, and the Corsair brand, and sort of, we've been using them to power a variety of systems for a long time, and I've personally been a fan in personal environments and systems before I started doing reviews and things like that, and they've been good quality, and they've lasted through several systems. Oh, here's the mad scientist view of me testing.
I'm just curious as to this laptop. Did you borrow this from a family member? Because this is not a Mac.
No, that is in fact my laptop that I usually use to plug into different environments and different external systems like cars and stuff like that. I use that to do car diagnostics and capture.
Oh, okay. So when you actually need to get work done, I get it. You're not using a Mac
different kinds of work. When I'm actually doing other kinds of work, I'm usually using a Mac.
Okay,
what
so
I did during the testing,
jumping in here.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I've got to jump in here.
Please.
Did you remember 5 years ago? Stop it, Jeremy. Stop it. 5 years ago, when we were at a point, Intel processors were 65 to 93 watts, usually 65 to 77 was total. The latest GeForce 900 series were not pulling any more than 175, and people were saying 650 watt power supply is overkill for everything you can buy, including
I remember buying 300 watt power supplies. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but that was back in 1997 when 300 was a massive amount of power. But I'm just talking even just 6 years ago. I mean, we started going up to, early 2000s, 1,000 watt power supply because we had multi GPU and all this other stuff. And then everything got more efficient around 2015. And now we're moving back on up. We've got 320 watt video cards, 350 watt, 400 if you remove all the safeties and stinking Intel with their CPUs, or 250 watt. Yeah, no, it's kind of funny to see how we have swung back into you need a bigger power supply.
You're totally right
when's
about
the last
that.
time you made fun of a kilowatt power supply?
Not so much anymore. Part of my review was actually going through different GPUs and noting total system draw through the measurement device I was using, which is a Passmark. And with I'll give you the mid range, the 2080 GPU, I was seeing total system power usage of around 435 watts, which was handled reasonably well by the 650 that I had. Then I put in a Vega Frontier. And anybody who's familiar with the Vega architecture knows how
you got to undervolt it.
I love the voice that you used because that's exactly what I heard in my head. No, that was not what I was after. I specifically did not undervolt it simply because I wanted to present a challenging load to the power supplies to see how they reacted. And this was the one that finally got the 650 to keel over and snap off. So mission accomplished. Thank you, Vega Frontier. But the 850 ran it.
Well, you should have got it like a 480. Get a GTX 480. Or no, the AMD Radeon 295X2. Yeah, you get into those dual GPU things.
I have a 580. I had a 580 I could have used. That would have been kind of midline.
Isn't that the 690?
The 690 is the dual.
That was
NVIDIA. Was a dual NVIDIA.
Yeah.
I did run it with a 1070. Very typical, very modest. I'd say if you had a 1070 style, of that era and that level C, and even compared with the 10700K that I had in the system and all the other kind of cards and things that I had going on, and I even had Corsair RGB stuff. It doesn't really draw a ton, but
what was the 10700 running without power limits or with power limits enforced?
Power limits enforced.
See, so if you take off power limits, which is the default behavior, then you need another 50 to 75 watts.
I did that when I went to the Vega because I got tired of it continuing to work.
Okay, so then you're like, okay, well, no power limits and a Vega with no undervolting. Now we need a bigger power supply, which they would have told you anyway. Well, I don't think 650 is really the ideal.
It was not, but at least it proved the point that that's actually the case and that there's a legitimate reason. Hey, don't feel bad about buying a 1,000-watt power supply. Just you might want to consider it.
You would feel bad about buying a 1,000-watt power supply when A, they're out of stock everywhere, and B, when you find one, they're $300.
Yeah, they're damn expensive, unfortunately.
They are very.
But
850 is the new
aim
number.
It is, and it worked reasonably well. I would have no qualms about saying, 850 handled it. And that's obscene. I don't know how the new 30 series will react, or the new AMD system. I don't know. I look forward to
you'll
being able
find out.
to test those.
I'll send you that 3080. But the instantaneous power draw from a 3080 is quite high. It will peak well over 400 watts.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to withstand that, because if you're parting out and this is irrelevant because you can't buy one, but if you were to be building a system and you wanted a 3080, just because it has a 320 watt TDP does not mean that it will not hit 460 watts at times.
Exactly.
So you have to be
exactly. And that's what some of my very small amount of testing turned out to be. And I'd like to get a little bit better at it in that kind of figure out a test suite that I could do something that would be repeatable. I pointed out that I didn't graph anything because I did not have a repeatable scenario that I could say, hey, these things are comparable. I was sort of just feeling my way through it until I was recording peaks, but not kind of a scenario. So
Lee had an entire table full of equipment, generating loads of whatever wattage.
$50,000 worth of stuff, or whatever.
And well over that, I'm sure, when it was new.
Yeah.
But
I'm no Lee Garbett.
Yeah. Lee,
but,
it's kind of a specialized thing too. Like even I don't know how many people are left who do old school power supply reviews with all the test equipment, and it's so expensive.
Yeah, even what we were
Johnny
doing
Guru
here
is the only one I know of.
He works for Corsair now, right?
Well, the website's
may have
still
been-
there.
The website's still there, yeah. But
I may have been in touch with them because I had some questions about something I was seeing, and I actually contacted Corsair and had a discussion with them about some readings that I was getting, and we had a reasonable conversation between myself and them, and I actually reached out to Passmark with some questions. So that's going to be an ongoing thing, and so I think testing power supplies for us will be refined over time. We'll see how that goes.
Got to have the taste test involved now, though.
I did not lick it.
Once you get it out, just lick it and see how it does.
did you
There
attempt
were-
to weld anything with either
No,
of them?
Yes,
there were
arc
very
welding.
few exposed wires during this.
The
Although if you bring up the
650
picture,
plus the 850 together.
yeah, I should have.
Could it weld?
That's not how you alternate current.
Oh,
You gods.
just wire them in series.
Yeah. But anyway, I was
All
pleased to
right.
do it, and I have no trouble at all saying this is probably going to be enough. You should buy something in this zone. It's going to serve you well.
Honestly, I think that kind of testing is probably more useful if you're saying, hey, with this GPU and then with this GPU, because people want to know how much was the total draw, what's the headroom, was it reliable? If you ran it for a long time under real world conditions and it was fine.
Yeah.
You know, samples vary. You might get a
Right.
bad PSU, but that's why you have
And just to
warranty.
say it
I
out
suddenly
loud,
had a 200-watt load to it, just for a blip.
and just to say it out loud, just because not everybody might read the article, I pushed these with a full ATA64 suite with everything turned on, FPU testing, CPU crush, all of it. And I also ran DX11 Unigen Heaven in 1080p Ultra, full tessellation, ultra sampling, multi-tap, subsampling in a window next to each other, just so that I had pretty much everything stressed out, memory tests and GPU going. Then I had I plugged in some case fans, even though I had an open air system, and I had a 10 gig NIC in there as well. I had a 280 AIO with a pump and two 140 RGB fans. Just to kind of try and simulate as best as I could as, hey, this is a load that the system or this power supply might experience from a system in real life. And then I sampled the whole thing using an inline power supply tester, which is a Passmark unit, which has a instantaneous readout on a screen that you can sort of page through and see what's going on from a voltages and overall load perspective, as well as a piece of software that I ran on a laptop, which connects to that via USB and gives all kinds of instantaneous output readings and allows me to capture that to a CSV file. I'll get better at it.
I just wish Passmark had a PSU tester that was more modern as far as like power draw, like more than one PCI
You have to
Express
run two of them in
810.
parallel.
Right, but there should be a single unit.
You're right.
It's not a expensive device. I think it's around $360 or something like that. But
It's something like that. Yeah, $400 bucks. Mhm.
but you'd think they'd offer a higher tier device that's like, now this is the one that's designed for PSUs up to 1500 watts, because the individual
Granted.
one it's basically for like a 500 watt PSU. Got
I didn't
one
have any
SATA,
trouble with the
one
850.
8-pin, a 24 pin
Yeah.
ATX, and just one EPS. Is it 8-pin? Or is it
They've
4-pin
updated
on
that.
one?
It's only a single EPS, but they've updated a little
Oh.
bit and include at least dual PCIe.
Oh, the new one has
now.
that? Okay.
Yes, I had to buy one because I needed to get this done.
Yes. All right. Picks of the week.
To keep us going on, let me just add one more thing.
Yes.
Angus Young turned 62 today.
You gods.
His brother passed away several years ago, right?
Yes, he
Yeah.
did. Malcolm.
Yeah.
And he was the
Malcolm.
taller of the two at 5'3".
That's why the pants look funnier on him.
I think you might need to explain who these people
Excuse
are.
me.
Josh.
I hear upset
If
cats.
you don't know, then you don't need to know. Picks of the week.
Yeah, you don't
Oh,
need
wait.
to.
No.
You
Hold
can
on.
look it up. Let's move
Jeremy
along.
just left to go get something.
Cats
He
fighting.
heard upset cats.
Uh-oh.
But I can go.
Break. You can go.
He
All
was
right,
thunderstruck.
Picks of the week.
Thunderstruck.
Okay,
didn't
it's
move.
National
No.
Backup Day or something like that. And so Newegg and Amazon had some good prices, and the Samsung 980 for the 1 terabyte, it's like $50 off. Goes from $229 to $179. Their 2 terabyte is, I think, $349. These are pretty good prices for PCIe 4.0 stuff that works well. So yeah, if you're looking to get a nice, solid 4.0 NVMe, it's a good time to get one because the prices are significantly lower. And I've got dogs barking, so move on to Jeremy while I pause and see what the heck's going on.
There's no Jeremy to move on to.
Oh, the cats
We're gonna
went
go
really
to-
His
crazy.
cats are
I'll
hissing
take
at
it.
your dogs.
Here, wait. I'll kill some time
Yeah.
here. While I was at Micro Center, Josh, I also bought. I'm going to take my finger off this in a second.
Hold on.
I
Oh,
also brought it.
yeah, 850.
Yeah, which is pretty reasonable for a PCIe. For a poor man's PCIe 3. 3.0.
Oh, it's a 750. It's not the 850.
Sorry, it's a 750. Yep.
Oh, okay.
But that'll be
moving
enough
on.
for me.
Yeah.
You bought a
That'll be enough for me.
750. You're
I did.
upstaging Jeremy's pick. He's not even here to defend himself.
No.
With your inferior
sorry.
Intel
Yeah.
PCIe Gen 3 apologist.
look at this-
Hey, the
SSD.
670 rocks, man.
Look at what they just to prove that Micro Center is not always. And I'll tell the other side of this in a second. This is what it was stickered at. You see that?
Yeah,
That aim focus.
Yeah, 179.
$79.99.
179. That's too much money.
That's pretty expensive for
I know.
PCIe
Did you
3.0 1
actually
terabyte.
pay for it?
124.
Okay, that's about where it should be.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, prices are increasing actually on this, and I think it's because all of them are stuck on the ship in a Suez Canal. So the supply is getting short on that, including power supplies.
The fog is getting thicker. And Leon's getting
just got-
larger.
I just got this from Be Quiet. Oh my god, it's so heavy. What is
1,000
this?
watts.
This is
That's
straight
rare.
power. 1,000.
That is
Yep.
a rare
I gotta
piece of hardware
I
you
know.
have there.
put it down
sometimes
before it breaks my arms.
Yeah, so one day I will need to replace my Mushkin 1000 watt power supply.
Hint,
They don't
hint,
make power supplies anymore.
hint.
But
They
I gotta test
probably
that.
never did. They probably just had
Well, of course not, but yeah.
LEDX or Seasonic or FSP.
It's
The
true.
usual suspects. Hey Brett, since you've
Flower.
been
What's the flower one?
Super
not
flower?
sunflower. Super flower.
Superflower. Superflower makes the
Superflower.
LEDX.
okay,
That's right.
Brett.
Yep.
What is your pick? Since Jeremy apparently has left us.
My pick is having to do. Are you down with the struggle regarding controlling your freaking RGBs on all of your different devices? Your motherboard, your RAM, your GPU, your fans. You know what? There might be an alternative. It's called OpenRGB. There's a crew of people out there who have tasked themselves with reverse engineering all of the I2C protocols that sneak around inside your system on a back channel USB bus that talks to your RAM and talks to your GPU and talks to the motherboard and sets colors and patterns and things. And they've shouldered the burden of trying to sidestep all of the conflicts between the different RGB controllers and this other stuff that software tends to do to your system by running weird stuff in the background and asking you to sign into cloud environments. It's painful. Let me tell you. This software system potentially might help. Go take a look at this thing and run it on your system and see if it works. It's all command line, of course, so you need to be an adult about it and just stop clicking on things. Type at it, damn it.
Okay, that's offensive, but
Will it,
I understand.
Will it control Sebastian's hair color? That's the question.
Absolutely. Yes, it will.
I'm working on creating the ultimate blank canvas for RGB color because my hair is rather rapidly starting to go gray in spots. You can't really tell in the video, but
That'll help with the RGBs, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It
'cause
will.
This is too dark. I need lighter hair. Now, if I can go
time
with
will help
like
you. Time.
clear hair, totally devoid of mass.
Look at Josh.
Like what Josh has. The ultimate platform. The ultimate RGB platform. The palm of his hand. Let's polish that baby up.
Phrasing.
I know. I'm chasing as fast as I can.
Look at Kent and Jeremy down there with all that luscious hair. And then
You think so, but there are things happening underneath that you're not aware of.
Uh-oh. Okay. You mean down lower?
Oh,
where the
I wasn't going back to that.
want to know.
You got upset last time. I was
not
sticking with
this.
this.
You said
I repeat,
down
this
below.
is not this kind of channel.
Yes, it is that kind of channel.
All right.
This show is not for children
No.
or adults.
No, it's made by
with
children.
any taste
I
whatsoever.
don't know who it's for. I don't know who this is for.
Jeremy had a pick that will be completely foreign to anyone who's been watching for the last 10 minutes.
He was gone. He doesn't know.
He does he? Okay.
It's just a very slow day for picking up hardware because, well, you can't freaking buy anything but SSDs right now. And so if you're in Canada, there is actually a nice sale on both the SN850s, and if the price is like the 1 terabyte is about 40% off, the 2 terabytes 36-ish% off or so. So well worth it picking it up, and if it's a little bit too rich for you, or you run Intel, the 750s are also on sale for about the equivalent discount, but about half the price. So it's the only component you can buy nowadays, so why not?
Not true. You can also buy CPU coolers. Isn't that right, Kent?
You can. And Newegg currently has a sale on the Cooler Master ML240 that I reviewed about a year and a half ago for the website. It's a very good cooler. The pump on it was actually extremely quiet. The only problem I had with it were the fans were a little noisy, but right now it's $80 with a $25 mail-in rebate, so you can get a very good performing 240 millimeter AIO for $55.
And then buy whatever fans you want.
And buy whatever fans you want.
On a PC here with a 9900K, and it did really, really well. The pump is really quiet. The only problem we had was the fans were a little noisy.
It almost sounds like there's an echo in here. That's the
I
thing.
just couldn't hear 'em over the
performance
fans.
is great if you let the fans get to like 45, 50 decibels. But
I just figured it's because
they make good.
We had it in the roof. We hung them upside down. I don't know. I thought maybe the bearings were loaded in a weird way.
That was the problem with the fans on this unit. It actually wasn't the normal fan noise at the higher RPMs. That was actually pretty reasonable. It was the bearings in it. It had sleeve bearings that were just very noisy, and even at low speeds, they were noisy.
Yeah, they make a wobble sound or whatever. But yeah,
That's gonna be hard to bear.
Yeah. He writes a lot of his own titles.
Yeah, Jeremy writes all of his own material, just so you know.
Yeah. Nobody writes this for him.
No one would.
Is there anything
This is
else?
why we drink heavily.
Yeah, well, apparently.
One of the reasons.
No mas.
Consensus
No
pick
mas.
from Picks of the Week. It was buy a WD SSD because everybody's been talking about it. Or a Samsung
Jeremy
980
didn't know
Pro.
that.
Get a Gen 4 SSD
didn't
while you
know.
can before they become scarce like everything else.
Josh picked a 980, so I don't know what you're talking about with Western Digital stuff.
Well, Brett was going on about his 750 that he got for his Intel system. So
I don't remember.
it was
That
a
probably
Intel
didn't
/
happen.
Micro Center rant. I kind
What
of
else is
actually
Apple was involved somehow.
That
Of
okay,
course.
that also happened.
he made
That
the
also
purchase. He reserved the purchase on his Apple M1 powered MacBook.
I'm glad I was out there listening
fabrication.
to three cats screaming and yelling
Oh,
at
you're
each
still on
other
an Intel
instead.
MacBook?
Fake news.
All right. Hey, I'm on an Intel MacBook. I have a 2015 Core, not Core 2 Duo. It's a Core i5, but it's a dual core MacBook Pro.
It's 10 o'clock.
It's midnight for me. All right.
I know, so it's even worse. So
it
let's
is.
cut it off.